Hello, dear friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is news time again from this very good channel. Welcome back. How are you all doing? Hope you're good. I pray that God will be with you in your endeavors. Today we have another update for you, and I want you to, after listening to it, you drop your opinion and suggestions you have so that Biafra will be free. And that's just it. Okay, let's go there.
In the eastern part, which we call Biafra, were also exposed to, so you had three different major ethnic groupings that constituted what we call the Niger area, which became Nigeria.
Okay. The Igbo people, one of the largest ethnic groups in sub-Saharan Africa, developed a strong ethnic identity during Britain's colonial rule. Many of them became enthusiastic in their embrace of Christianity and Western education. The skills the tribe acquired to develop Nigeria led to a series of ethnic clashes.
They felt they'd been rejected because they had to set up and build Nigeria. Now, in order to protect themselves, they said, since you no longer want us in Nigeria, because no part of Nigeria was actually safe for them, be it in the north, be it in the west, it was like a gang up. Because they were successful in most things, people felt they were rejected.
After 2.5 years of war, Biafran forces surrendered to the Nigerian federal military government and Biafra was reintegrated into Nigeria. 2017 marks 50 years since Biafra succeeded. A revival in secessionist sentiment in southeastern Nigeria threatens to undermine President Muhammadu Buhari's vision of a united Nigeria. With terror group Boko Haram waging war in the north and Niger Delta militants attempting to destroy oil production in the south, authorities have warned that anyone sowing discontent or inciting public disorder will be dealt with firmly. There have been accusations from human rights groups that peaceful Biafra activists are being unfairly targeted. There is a feeling among the Igbo community that they are still being marginalized from the rest of the country.
Indigenous people of Biafra, the present generation of Biafrans are saying that it cannot continue and justice must be done. It doesn't matter how long it takes. In the end, Biafra will be restored.
In many ways, the government has been applauded for its attempts to reconcile its various tribes under immense opposition. However, 50 years on, the legacy of Biafra is still palpable throughout the streets of Nigeria. Juliana Olayinka, reporting for Insight.
Well, let's discuss this further. I'm joined in the studio by Ledovika Iachino, who is an international news reporter at International Business Times UK, covering Africa and the Middle East. And also with us is Philip Iyedawo, who is the UK chairman for the ruling political party in Nigeria, the All Progressive Congress. Good to have both of you here. So this was clearly a very dark time in Nigeria's history. Philip, as a Nigerian, what does it mean to you?
Well, I mean, I think that let's look at where we are at as a country. I think we've moved a long way since the Biafran War 50 years ago. I think that also we have to understand that, yes, a number of persons still feel aggrieved and pained by the outcome of the Biafran War. It is the fact that for any war, for the scars to heal, it takes a lifetime. It takes a very long time for the scars of any kind of war to heal. The First and Second World War are still being discussed. So I think that 50 years, yes, a long time, but in the history of the healing processes that are involved in the post-war, it's still a short time. And I think that Nigeria has done tremendously well.
It may be a short time relatively, but are the underlying causes of the Biafran War being addressed?
That is a very key and critical question. If I may answer, I would say no. I would say no because the intensity and scope of the issues that led to the Biafran War, they are still there. And I think that Nigeria needs a bold and strong nationalistic leadership to deal with those challenges.
Do you agree with that, Ludovica? Because clearly there are still issues there. We've seen Igbo secessionist movements beginning to grow again in Nigeria.
Yes, I definitely agree with Philip. There are underlying causes that have not been addressed yet. And when I happen to talk with activists or members of these secessionist groups, what they claim is that, you know, they still feel disenfranchised, they don't feel part of Nigeria, they feel ignored by the federal government. And what they say is that they don't have access to education, they don't have proper infrastructure, they don't have jobs.
That President Buhari himself has been accused of following policies that marginalise Igbo.
Yes, and this is what people, you know, who call for a breakaway of the so-called Biafran territories are claiming as well. So I think, as Philip said, the government needs to address the underlying causes, the grievances, or needs to engage in a sort of dialogue, because what it seems to be happening at the moment is that, yes, the government is aware of the protest, of this ongoing sentiment, but it hasn't done much.
I mean, one of the many grievances is that no one has been held to account for that deliberate policy 50 years ago of denying food and medicine getting into southern Nigeria. So we saw those terrible, terrible pictures of starvation. So many people feel that justice hasn't been done.
Well, first let me say this. I am from the south part of Nigeria, so I'm not Igbo, but we are quite close. We are close enough to them, you know, in terms of proximity. I'd like to answer this question two ways. First, it's infrastructural development. Now, this government led by President Buhari has made tremendous impact already within 2 years in terms of infrastructural development compared to all the other governments we've had in the past in the southeast. No doubt about that. Talk about rail transport, talk about road construction, talk about the second Niger bridge that has been there for years. All of these have been actively, you know, constructed. So infrastructure-wise, yes, a lot is going on under this government. Now, in terms of interfacing with the people, sitting down to discuss and look at the key problems. Why was there a war in the first instance? This is where I think that the leadership, both of the Igbo and on the Nigerian side, continue to fail. There is a need to sit down and interrogate why was there a war in the first instance.
But doesn't it come down to the fact that the peoples and the tribes in the south feel culturally disconnected from the north? Their heritage is different, their origins are different. That's one of the key issues, isn't it?
I think so, but I think that the moment when key grievances are addressed, people might feel also more willing to feel Nigerians as part of a whole country. I think so. So, I mean, I think a dialogue is needed.
So, but what do we need to see? I mean, Philip is saying that, you know, that there have been improvements, there have been great strides, but it takes strong and bold government changes to make a difference. So what do we need to see in Nigeria?
I think, first of all, there needs to be clarity in terms of what happens when the so-called pro-Biafra activists take to the streets and protest, because there have been rights groups claiming that unarmed protesters have been killed, and then on the other side you have security forces constantly denying these claims. So there needs to be clarity in this. There needs to be reports, like better insightful reports on what happens on the ground, and people need to start taking responsibility for their actions. On one side, this is, I think, it would be the first step, because we've seen the pro-Biafra movement regaining momentum following the arrest of Nnamdi Kanu, and things seems to have escalated in the past 2 years, and the killings and the fact that people have been allegedly killed by security forces further increased grievances. So I think that would be the first step.
So, Philip, what do you think are the prospects for Nigeria, the issue of Biafra? You know, what can southern indigenous people hope for in Nigeria?
My personal feeling and views are this, that Nigeria has a great future. A. B. I don't see Nigeria of 2017, you know, with the possibility of breakup. All right. But I also think that there is the need to sit down and look at the issues. 1. 2, there is the need you ask the question about people being held to account. Being held to account does not necessarily mean being punished. There is a need to simply say, I am sorry. You know, from both sides, I don't think that the fault, at least from what I have read, I mean, of all that happened, and I was a child when the Biafra War took place. I think that from both sides there were errors and there were mistakes and there were steps taken by both sides that hurt the feelings and the relationship between ethnic groups in Nigeria. Nigeria is not made up of just 3 tribes. It's made up of a huge number, over 250 or 280 tribes. So it's a huge challenge for any government. But it is a willingness to say, look, we need to sit down and build a nation out of these multi-ethnic nationality groups.
And we're going to talk more about tribal divisions after this short break. But both of you, for the moment, thank you very much indeed for that.
Thank you very much, Louis.